Thank you, everyone, and thank you for that kind introduction, Ray. I appreciate all you do. You're just such a great voice in the vegan community, and I do encourage you to check out his Veg Curious group at the Seed Bank in Petaluma. Is it the last Wednesday of every month? Last Wednesday of every month from 6 to 8, and I will be presenting there this coming month, October 26th. So as he mentioned, I am a raw food enthusiast. I'm a holistic health counselor certified through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and I have studied raw foods at the Living Food Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and through the Living Light Culinary Institute up in Fort Bragg. Many of you are familiar with that locally. I would like to introduce my able assistant, Kirsten Brown. She's going to be helping with some of the samples, and she's also going to be shadowing me on the first recipe, so we make sure we have enough samples for everyone. There's a great crowd. I love to see this enthusiasm. So thank you all for coming. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the benefits of raw food. It's been something that I've incorporated a high raw lifestyle for about 36 years now. That's as long as I've been studying nutrition. And even before raw foods became a household terminology, I just always was one to have a huge dinner salad, a full dinner plate size that you really... That's your meal. The salad is the main dish, to quote Dr. Joel Fuhrman, one of my favorite nutrition-based MDs. So a lot of people get into the same routine with salads. They're having the same greens, the same vegetable accompaniments, their favorite dressing. And so that's why I titled this talk today, Fresh Ways with Green Smoothies and Salads, because I think these are two staples in a good, healthy, nutritious lifestyle. I personally begin my day with a full Vitamix carafe, 64 ounces of green smoothie. That's my breakfast. I know Victoria Butenko, who's written one of my favorite books, The Green Smoothie Revolution. She also has Green for Life. She recommends at least 32 ounces, which is a half of this. So depending on my day, what I have going on, I have at least 32 to 64 ounces of green smoothie each day. And I recommend rotating the ingredients in not only your salads, but also in your smoothies. And so a lot of people are using the same greens every day, day in and day out. Well, the science has proven that in greens, there's different nutrients in each of the different greens, and that we, as being 99.4% similar to chimpanzees in our DNA, should be eating at least 40% greens to our daily diet. Most people, even vegetarians and vegans, are not eating that high of a quantity. A lot of vegans I know are eating things that are still kind of grain-based and less on the vegetables, or certainly a lot of soy. That seems to be the common misconception, really, that that's really the only vegan way to get your protein. And actually the title of my talk at the Veg Curious is going to be Beyond Tofu, how to get your vegan protein from non-soy sources, basically. So that's another interesting topic altogether. But nuts and seeds are the primary source of protein in a vegan diet. And so we're going to begin by making the chocolate cherry green smoothie. And instead of using a protein powder, I use a combination of flaxseed, chia seed, and hemp seed. And I put 2 tablespoons each, and hopefully everybody has the recipe. I had Kirsten pass that out. I just put 2 tablespoons each of these into the blender dry, and then I grind it up into my own very fresh protein powder. So the oils in the seeds are still intact. A lot of people say, well, can't I skip that step and buy the pre-ground flaxseed or the pre-ground chia seed? The problem with those is the oils do go rancid very quickly, and you're losing not only losing the omega-3 benefits, but you're also losing the nutrient density in the seed, and the oil, once it goes rancid, can actually become a carcinogenic property. Contains free radicals, and so that's why I recommend just grinding your nuts and seeds fresh. These are seeds I can often recommend putting in something like almonds, Brazil nuts, walnuts as well for added protein. So you're mixing a little bit of protein in with your greens, which helps with the absorption of the nutrients in them. So I'm just going to put 2 tablespoons in my blender, and I pre-measured these. So Kirsten's going to be shadowing me and making the same smoothie with the same ingredients. The remainder is the other 2 tablespoons.
What's the first ingredient?
These are flax seeds, chia seeds, and hemp seeds. And did you not get the recipe? Okay, it's right on the top line of the recipe. There we go. So a high-speed blender such as a Vitamix or a Blendtec is really ideal for smoothies because it's going to give you that really creamy consistency that we crave. I have used other style of blenders, and if you don't have a high-speed blender, you're going to want to start this again with the dry blade, but you're going to do less ingredients at once. So you'll do it in steps, kind of in the order of how it says to put things in. You'll blend at each step along the way. But you'll see with a Vitamix that all you have to do is turn the on-off switch. This one has a variable speed from 0 through 10, so I go with that to the 10 mark slowly next, and then there's a low and high variable. So it's really just turning it on in that order and turning it off again in that order. Let's hope we don't blow any circuits by doing 2 at once. So we have fresh protein powder in here now. So that's 6 tablespoons of those high omega, high protein seeds that are going to be the base for our smoothie. A lot of people say, do I need to do this in a special grinding device or a dry Vitamix carafe? No, if you just start with your regular wet carafe without any liquid in it, it does make a nice powder. So the base for the smoothie in the raw food world is water. That is certainly the healthiest beverage of choice. A lot of people do tend to use fruit juices. I prefer water because we're adding a good amount of fruit. To add a juice which is already a pre-concentrated form of, it's high in the glycemic index. So I believe in the whole foods, the freshest foods possible. A juice typically, unless you're making it yourself right before putting it in here, has been pasteurized, so it's no longer a raw food. So again, using your fresh fruits or your frozen fruits is the best way to get the sweet flavors in here. So what we're going to do is add in the banana, 2 bananas per blender in this case. And you can choose to use different amounts. You can use 1 banana and more berries or such. But this is just a basic recipe for the chocolate cherry, which is a really popular flavor. The cacao powder in here has lots of antioxidants and minerals, so it adds a nice flavor as well as a lot of nutrient density. So we've got our 2 bananas. We're going to add in the greens. These are collard greens that I've pre-washed and chopped to be, about that size. So the blender does well with that size of greens. And a lot of people don't put enough greens in their smoothie, so I put in a good handful or 2. It's about the equivalent of 5 large collard greens. And when I pre-wash them and store them in a baggie, I put a little paper towel in with them to absorb the moisture so that they do handle that well. So if you pack yours in, we'll see which ones even. I might need to add a few more into my side just to even it out. And then we're going to add in the cacao nibs, which is 4 tablespoons per blender. You can use cacao powder as well, but just make sure it's raw and it's just a single ingredient food as opposed to cocoa powder, which has been processed with alkali, and that's going to become a little bit of a toxin. So this is a 2 tablespoon measure for those of you who are keeping tabs on me. 2 times 2 is 4 tablespoons. And then we're going to put in dates. The date of choice for sweetening things in the raw food community are medjool dates. And they usually are moister and a little bit sweeter than the deglet or some of the other more popular ones on the market. But there is a company called, I think, the Date People in Southern California. They have over 36 varieties of dates. And it's really interesting the different flavors that each one of them carries. For example, in the holiday food prep class that I'm offering, which I have flyers for, I use the barhi dates, which are really ideal for making something like a pecan pie. It just changes the flavor completely from using a medjool date. So get to know different dates and their purposes in flavoring world. But for this purpose, we're just going to take a date, we'll cut it in half. How's this on the mirror? I didn't check the mirror. Can you see my cutting board? Okay, good. I take the pit out, and then I usually will stack 3 dates, one on top of the other, cut down the middle, and then cut it into thirds. I did that prep work in advance so you didn't have to watch me cutting 8 dates, but I'm going to put half of them in here and give Kirsten the other half for her blender.
Thank you.
Terrific. So the next ingredient is the water. And I normally don't measure things. So for the sake of teaching a class, I try to give you a recipe and just know that you don't really have to follow this. I tend to just throw things in and whip it up and, taste test, and it usually is pretty darn good. You might be able to say, I need a little bit more fruit, or add a little more water if it's not blending well. In this case, it says 4 cups of fresh water. The other beautiful thing is there's a measuring caliber on the Vitamix, so you don't have to measure. And, as I'm saying that, I'm not going to measure. I'm just going to pour in some nice spring water. In this case, I usually do use filtered water from my home version, but I wanted to have this easy to transport. So in this case, going a little bit above the halfway mark, maybe to the 2/3 mark, is a good place to start with the water content in here. And then I always put the frozen fruit in last, because if I were to put it in at a different layer, it would probably bind up, and if I added the water after, that would solidify it and turn it into ice. So by putting the fruit in that's frozen last, you're going to have it blend a little bit more easily. So in this case, we're going to do 4 cups per blender, if that fits. Again, at home, I don't normally measure, but my eyeball is usually pretty good. I did do a demo once where I tried to follow my measurements and then went to blend it up, and I exceeded the capacity of the blender. So in this case, you just go to the top of the blender. I don't want any mishaps, so if it doesn't fit 4 cups, fine. So in here again, if you're following your recipe, we have the flaxseed, chia seed, hemp seed that we ground up. We have our cherries, bananas, collard greens, water, cacao nibs, and dates. That's the recipe. I'm going to blend it up. The plunger. So I just want to point out, in the case of Kirsten's here, she's got a slightly different blender shape, and the ingredients needed a little help. So she's using the plunger, which you can insert in here. And so just because I want to have it to the maximum, I'm going to add a few more cherries here for you so that we have as much as this blender capacity will hold now that it's...
Where do you buy that huge package of organic cherries?
Costco.
Costco?
Costco.
Shop at Costco if you don't have a Costco membership.
You can pay a lot more at Whole Foods or the other health food-oriented stores. Yeah, you won't find that brand elsewhere.
Can you use strawberries?
Oh, of course. Any berry, any type of fruit that you like. This particular recipe, I was aiming for the chocolate cherry flavor. My typical smoothie is usually a mix of berries, so things like strawberries. We might as well finish it, so divvy up between the two. Things like strawberries, blackberries, blueberries, raspberries. One of my favorite is a raspberry and pear combination, and that's bok choy is the green. So again, mixing it up, rotating the greens you use, rotating the fruits you use. Berries are certainly one of the lower glycemic fruits, so it's one that I recommend. Cherries are very anti-inflammatory, which is one of the reasons I've chosen them here today. So we're just going to finish doing the blending with the additional cherries in here. And see the rich, color. It's just amazingly beautiful. And I feel that the darker the color, the more nutrients and antioxidants in the food. So just definitely aiming for the darker fruits and berries are one of the ways to get healthy. And the beauty of this is it's just delicious. So we're going to bring it over here. If I might enlist the services of Steve, Terrell, and Tyrese to help with the assisting. Have the crew in the audience here. And if we could get the smoothie distributed amongst the crowd, that would be great. So a smoothie is one of the first recommendations that I give to my clients in my health counseling practice. I have one client, she came to a demo such as this, and I had demonstrated 3 different dishes, and one of the only options that she chose was to introduce the green smoothie as her breakfast every day. And after 3 months, she had lost 40 pounds, and she was feeling so much more energized. I mean, I met her before she even began, and this was a woman 67 when I met her, walking with a limp, hunched over, pasty skin, no vitality, her eyes were dull. And by the 3 months after she did the smoothies, just the one change she made, again, lost 40 pounds, and she had a lightness to her step. She said, I have never seen the benefit from anything I've done as great as adding in the green smoothies. So she then contracted to work with me through one of my longer-term programs. It was a 6-month program. She continued to lose weight up to the 70-pound mark, and she looked like a teenager by the time we were done. She actually got off of thyroid medication that she had been on for 50 years. She started it at 17. She was 67. And other medications. Her gout totally went away. It's just amazing the power of green smoothies. And there's also beyond Victoria Butenko's book, her son Sergei Butenko did a smoothie experiment where he took ultra-marathoners and CrossFit trainers and did this video over a 6-week period where, again, no changes in their habits whatsoever other than adding in 32 ounces of green smoothie a day. And these people were able to improve their time, and they were already highly skilled athletes. They were able to reduce their recovery time, so instead of having a day of rest between this heavy activity, they were able to do their activities every day. But the most important thing is their blood work. They had their blood levels tested, and even these super healthy athletes made drastic improvements. I don't have all the numbers in my head, but just the amount of improvements they made with that one change in their lifestyle is why I recommend this as my #1 get healthy and tasty breakfast choice. So again, mix it up, try different ingredients. I do recommend the book by Victoria Butenko, Green Smoothie Revolution. Has over 200 recipes and lots of testimonials. There's one picture of a guy I always show. He's got 2 people in the pair of pants that he used to wear himself, and there's still room. So he lost well over 100 pounds just by making this one change. So it's not only for weight loss, but optimal health. And that's really the target market I approach is the people that want to achieve optimal health as well as their ideal weight. So it kind of goes hand in hand. Once you reach your ideal weight, you typically, if you're eating these types of whole foods, plant-based lifestyle, are going to have the optimal health. So that's my #1 health recommendation. While they're getting those samples out, I'm going to continue with the salad, and we're going to make a beautiful arugula, fennel, and pecan salad with pears. So again, the salad doesn't have to be boring with the same lettuce and a mealy tomato and celery, which is what I grew up with. I really disliked salads as a child because it was the same exact little iceberg lettuce thing every day. Chives from the garden. To this day, I hate chives because I had them every day of my childhood. I'm sure they're super healthy and great, but you know how you build a resistance to the things that you eat day in and day out. So again, the key here is rotating all the foods. I work a lot with people with food allergies and sensitivities, and the #1 way to avoid food sensitivities is to not eat the same foods day in and day out, to wait at least 4 days before having the same food again. Dr. Elson Haas, he's another local MD that specializes in food allergies. I've studied with him. And that is one of the biggest recommendations is to rotate everything. So many of my clients come to me and say, well, I have oatmeal every day for breakfast. How could I ever switch to having a green smoothie? Well, Oatmeal's good once in a while, but if you're having it day in and day out, I know my own mother for, since I've known her, every single day, Cheerios with regular milk, heaven forbid. But, it's just you have to get different nutrients by getting different foods into your diet. So the more variety, the better. That's why I wanted to introduce the arugula, which is one of my favorite greens. It's a little bit more exotic than most lettuces. Again, I have 2 pounds in here. I pre-washed, and I put the little paper towel in to absorb the moisture so that the greens would stay fresher. So bear with me while I remove that paper towel. And in making it simpler, I recommend a lettuce spinner. There's different varieties. I have one with the cord that you pull, and I didn't bring it today because it took 3 to 4 batches to get this amount cleaned, and I have a limited amount of time. But a good size capacity on your lettuce spinner. Put your greens in so that you have enough space to swish around with your hands and get the debris that might come with them off, and then you want to recycle that water onto your plants ideally, and then spin the lettuce dry. It does store well in the spinner in the refrigerator, so as soon as you get your greens home, it's a good idea to get them to the point where they're just quick and easy to grab and turn into a fresh, delicious, healthy salad. So the other ingredients, and hopefully everybody has their recipe, we're going to start by making a dressing. And let the flavors meld here. So this is a simple dressing. Includes a variety of citrus juices. We have fresh squeezed orange juice and fresh squeezed lemon juice. This is Meyer lemon, which is a little bit sweeter. Again, if you want to keep the recipe raw, you're going to want to do your own juicing. If you're not so tight into the raw, you can substitute with store-bought orange juice and make it a little simpler. And the recipe could go well with either, just the citrus, one or the other, orange or lemon. But I like the combination of these two flavors. Again, a little bit of sweet and a little bit of tart. So I have pre-squoze my citrus on an electric citrus juicer, which is a small tool, about $20. And you just cut your fruit in half and push down onto a little rotating electric device that takes the juice out, separates out the seeds and the pulp, so that you have fresh squeezed juice here. I see a thumbs up to the smoothie. Good. I'm glad to hear that. It's one of my favorites, and it's so nourishing. So my favorite oil to use in a dressing is flaxseed oil, and most people I know will use olive oil as a typical salad dressing, and that's a fine oil, but the flaxseed oil is high in the omega-3 essential fatty acids, and the reason they're essential is our body doesn't produce them. We need to get them from food sources. And a lot of people take flaxseed oil supplements, like a pill form, or they'll take a tablespoon or 2 of this liquid form of flaxseed oil, but why not just turn it into a delicious dressing and get it in your food sources? So that's why I use a flaxseed oil as my dressing base. So we're going to add to that a little bit of coconut nectar, which is the replacement these days for agave nectar in raw food recipes. A lot of raw food books that have been written, and even current books, do say that agave nectar is a good choice. However, in the last couple of years, it's been proven to be higher on the glycemic index than high fructose corn syrup. So the coconut nectar, at least for now, and things change in the nutrition world. I'm the first to say that. I've been studying nutrition for 36 years. For now, the coconut nectar appears to be the lowest glycemic index sweetener of liquid form, which is one of the reasons I choose that. Also, just a little bit of salt and pepper. I use the Himalayan pink sea salt. It has over 80 minerals. Whereas a traditional sea salt that's white and has been bleached and it has been stripped of those minerals. So either a Himalayan pink sea salt or a Celtic kind of a gray sea salt, they still have their minerals intact. There's other exotic salts that you can find now, and salt should have some color to it. The white is a factor of bleaching it. So you want to make sure you get a good quality mineral salt. So we're going to start by whisking the dressing ingredients together. And it's pretty simple, equal parts in this case, 8 ounces each of the flaxseed oil, the lemon juice, and the orange juice. So I'm going to take this off. And I'm cooking for a crowd here. I'm raw food prepping for a crowd, so I don't usually use quite as much, but I wanted to make sure I had a good amount of samples for everybody. This is the Meyer lemon fresh squeezed, and the fresh squeezed Valencia oranges in this case. And then we're going to add in, I'm doing a quadruple recipe, so bear with me if it doesn't look like what you see on yours. I'm going to add in 4 tablespoons of the coconut nectar. With this, because it's a little bit runny, I eyeball it. Again, I don't measure things typically at home, and if I were to pour this in and measure it, I would lose a lot in the measuring spoon, and then I'd feel like I was wasting it. So I usually just kind of eyeball what about 4 tablespoons. Again, the measurements are not anything you have to be holding fast to. The coconut nectar is actually an optional ingredient. So if you don't want to have that added sweetness, you can certainly eliminate that. The arugula is ready along with this for you now, right there. Thank you. Okay, and so a little bit of the Himalayan pink sea salt. I had a measuring spoon which must have fallen into the bottom of my container because it was small, so we'll just go ahead and use one of the bigger spoons for now. And I'll eyeball what's about 1/2 of a teaspoon. And then it says a pinch of black pepper. I have a fresh pepper grinder, which is so much nicer than the one that's pre-ground again. Just the flavor really pops when you grind it really fresh. So if you can just go the extra minute to crank out some fresh pepper, you're going to really taste the difference. Okay, so in the dressing, again, flaxseed oil, and I always do this for my own benefit too to make sure I haven't missed anything. Flaxseed oil, fresh squeezed orange juice, fresh squeezed Meyer lemon, coconut nectar, Himalayan sea salt, and black pepper. I'm just going to whisk those ingredients together to make them fully blended. And now I'm going to use a food processor to prepare the vegetable ingredients that are going to go onto the bed of greens. This is a good quality Cuisinart food processor. And anytime a recipe says to process something, it typically means you're using this S-blade, which is the primary tool. And in this case, I have a second bowl that fits into my original bowl. This particular model comes with 3 bowls. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by processing the pecans and getting them ready to use as the topping. And then that'll set aside while I do the rest of the vegetables. So this is going to, even though in the recipe order it's listing it a little bit differently, this will allow me to not have to put my have all the wet stuff on the first bowl. So this is going to keep things drier for now. So I should be having about 4 cups. Let me go ahead and measure. No, that's 4 cups. I didn't pre-measure these, but it depends on the what you're using it for. In the raw food community, and that's a good question. She asked, do I soak the nuts before? A lot of people do soak nuts and seeds in water, and that removes the enzyme inhibitors, and then it's more digestible, and there's a lot of people that will do that for all their nuts and seeds. But in some cases, you want the texture. If I were to pre-soak these and ground them, I would turn it into a more of a mushy consistency, like a pate consistency. But I'm looking for a texture crunch with this particular thing. So I have not soaked these. An alternative would be to soak them and then dehydrate them after, and then they will become crunchy. The nuts with the enzyme inhibitor is not going to be that detrimental if you do it in moderation. Most people over time have not soaked their nuts and seeds, so in different circumstances based on what the end result is in the recipe, I will go ahead and use just a organic pecan in this case. So these pecans are going to want to be just roughly chopped. On the food processor, there's an on-off button, and then there's a pulse button here. I'm going to try the pulse button so I don't get them too ground up. I want to keep some texture, but not whole pecans. So I'm doing it intermittently. That lets them rest, brings it back up, lets them rest. And I can watch it and monitor it more evenly. So that's about all I want to do is break them up a little bit here to not have them whole. They'll spread around a little bit easier. So in this case, I can take out the S-blade, use the carafe as the serving with these gloves on. It's going to be a little tougher. I have another pair of gloves. We'll just use these. There we go. So I'm setting this aside, and I'm also going to want as my topping here the cranberries mixed in with the pecans. So I like the Eden brand of dried cranberries. They are apple juice sweetened, so most cranberries that you get in a bulk bin or in other supermarkets are going to be sweetened with regular sugar, which I do recommend fruit juice or fruit sweeteners in most cases, the sugar being the most addictive, more addictive than heroin, and linked to cancer. I try to avoid regular sugar. So apple juice sweetened on the Eden brand. We're just going to put a couple of packages of those in with our pecans, and that will make our topping. This is a beautiful holiday salad because of the blend of colors and the pecans in there. It's one of the reasons I chose it, because we are going into holiday season. I'm just going to, again, use this as, let me put my other gloves back on. Use this as the serving bowl in the case of not having to dirty or bring another bowl. When you travel and do these and you have 1 hour to get in and get out, you start thinking of how can we save on containers and travel. So just mixing these two together, and then they'll become a lovely topping. You notice my finger is covering the little hole in the middle.
Why don't we make it blended?
For texture.
Yes.
The cranberries?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a nicer texture to have them. They're cut in half already and dried. They are cut in half and dried. Okay, so the next tool that we'll use with the food processor is the slicing device, and we put in a little adapter. And this slicer happens to have a numbered control. I can go from 1 through 6 on the slicing variable, so you can make it thin or thick. In this case, I'm going to do it fairly thin. I'm going to put it on number 2. If I were at 6, it would be a much thicker slice. So it's nice to have that option for different recipes. And we're going to lock that in. Now that you've seen the on-off button and how quick it is, I'm going to turn this around so I can maneuver this container a little bit more. There are different ways to get the food in there. If you have a large amount of food, you can put it in through this large chute. But the catch is that this has to be engaged at least to the catch mark in order for it to actually operate. If I turned it on now, nothing would happen. But if I have that, engaged there, even down to the halfway mark, it will operate. So I usually tend to put the food, cut it in, and able to put it into this sized chute and push it down. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll just turn this around so I can access that a little bit more. And then we're going to use fennel in this case. Fennel is a lovely, sweet, licorice-y type flavor. I'll move the dressing aside for now, along with that tool. And this is pre-washed. I put it in the little Ziploc to travel with a moisture-absorbent paper towel. In this case, I'm just going to use the bulb part, so I will cut off the ends. Save those for later. Use those in a different recipe, so they are good. It's just they're a little fussy for the purpose of today. I'm going to cut these in half first. And then I'm going to cut out that little core that's kind of a triangle. That would be pretty tough in there. And then after I cut out this core, to fit into that smaller shoot, I'm just going to cut each piece into half again. There we go. Again, I take out this little container, and I can put in a couple of pieces, one up and one down, by alternating and rotating the way you put it in. You can get a little more food in. And then I push down. This is key for getting a good even slice. Push down at the same time as you push the on button. And then we'll do that. That's going to quickly slice all our fennel. My one pet peeve on this food processor is that there is often a little bit on top that didn't get fully sliced, but that's okay. At home, I would chop it up and add it in. I'm not going to take the time right now. But we have a beautiful thin sliced couple of bulbs of fennel. So I'm going to add that right into the dressing mixture. I'm just going to stir that in so that the flavors start to coat it. And then I'm going to add in some sliced pears. So we'll use the same food processor to slice the pears. So I'm using an apple corer and a slicer. This cuts it into 8 pieces and it takes the core out, so it makes it simpler. Just push straight down on the device, take the core out, and you've got 8 pieces that you can then put right into the slicing device. Again, pushing down.
Where did you buy the peeler? The slicer.
You can actually get this at any place, Target, any place that sells anything. Yeah, I've had it for years, but any kitchen supply store would certainly have one. So you can see how these time-saving tools really do make a difference. What's this?
The food processor, is there another one that you recommend? Or do you
Well, I prefer the Cuisinart brand. You know how, certain brands are synonymous with Kleenex is tissue, facial tissue, but we say Kleenex. Cuisinart is usually the thing people say when they're generically calling a food processor. So that's the brand I recommend. There are others out there. I'm not attached to your choice, but make sure it has a good capacity. Some people go for the real small ones. They save money.
like struggling with it?
Yeah. I'm adding the pears to this right now, so we're almost there. So that looks like it's getting pretty full. Go ahead and move that into our bowl. I'm just going to stir this together, and then the shallots are going to add a little bit of that oniony flavor. Shallots are in the onion family. They're kind of a cross between a regular yellow onion and a red onion. They have a little bit more of a bite to them. So a shallot, usually you'll find next to the garlic and onions. This is the size I'm talking about. They're much smaller than a typical onion. Usually you just take the peel off. It's red inside, so similar to a red onion. And then I usually just chop it across. And then sideways. I brought my dull knives because I got a new set of professional knives, and I have to admit I've cut myself a few times and I didn't want to travel with them and have an incident in front of you. But I did just get a beautiful new set of knives, so for me it's like, oh, these really are dull now. Didn't know what I was missing. So again, to save time, I have pre-chopped my shallots, and I'll add those in. Going to toss that. So if we're looking at the recipe now, we have the dressing, we've added in the fennel, the pears, and the shallots. And then as our topping on the side is the raw pecans and cranberries. Again, make sure your nuts are always raw. The cooked ones, they are detrimental to your health. The raw ones are beneficial to your health. Once you heat an oil in a nut, it forms acrylamides, which are carcinogenic properties. So what we have is the bed of arugula. Kirsten, would you show them? Just a lovely bed. Now, if you were serving this at home, you would probably put a large platter of arugula down, put this whole on top of it, again for entertaining, probably not this size, and then top it with the pecans. But we'll bring this dressing, this vegetable mixture with the dressing over, and we're just going to put a spoonful of the dressing, vegetable mixture onto each mini platter of arugula, and then we will top it with the cranberry pecan mixture. And if I could have my able assistants back to assist with this procedure, please. So after she is done with the dollop here, would you like to put a little sprinkle of this on each plate?
I sure will.
That would be perfect. And then when each plate is ready, the boys will serve. Terrific. So that is the recipe for the salad. Again, I recommend that you rotate your salads. There's lots of great recipes out there.
I can't even hear her. Please.
People get excited once the food gets
No, but you need to
presented.
be able to speak.
Thank
You
you.
really need to be able to
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. So, so I do teach a lot of variety of raw, vegan, and gluten-free food preparation classes. And this is just a small sampling of what's available. I have hundreds and hundreds of recipes in my repertoire. One of the things I'm just beginning this month on October 18th is called the Third Tuesday Lunch and Learn. I do work out of my home in Rohnert Park, and we'll meet from 11 to 1 every Tuesday, and we'll be doing either a salad or an appetizer, an entree, and a dessert. Hands-on, we all create it together, and then we sit down and enjoy the fruits of our labor and have the lunch as a group, and we discuss nutrition and health and holistic type topics over lunch. So it's a great way to say, hey, I helped with this, I can participate, I know I can do this. I'm going to pass around some flyers for that, and I'm also going to pass around my newsletter, email, list, sign-up sheet. I don't spam you, it's like maybe once a month at most, just saying, what's my next class coming up? And speaking of that, okay, I'll pass these around. What is the name of the book that you mentioned earlier? Green Smoothie Revolution? Yeah. So I actually have another class. So there's 2 flyers, just so you know, and then there's a third one I'll let you take on the way out if you're interested. But this one is for the third Tuesday Lunch and Learn I just mentioned. So I'll start that from this side.
Do you charge for that?
Yes, I do. That is $39 per session, or if you sign up for a series of 3, it's $97. And it doesn't have to be 3 consecutive months. It can be, 1 month, you take, December off. Let's say if you're busy for the holidays, you come back in January. I just know that you're paid up for 3 and you get the savings. It's close to $20 savings if you invest in the series of 3. And then the other class is my raw appetizers and desserts for holiday entertaining. So that's going to be on Saturday, November 19th from 10 to 1. And it is going to have stuffed mini peppers, crabless cakes with tartar sauce, a fruitcake cookie recipe, and my award-winning pecan pie. I've won multiple awards for this. Again, I mentioned the Barhi dates are kind of the key to that recipe, which is a little more exotic. Simple ingredients, whole foods. Again, everything is raw, vegan, and gluten-free. These classes, the 3-hour classes, include generous sampling. They're $67, and I do them typically once a month. So I'm going to start passing this flyer out from this direction. The other thing I like to mention, I'll point this out. I'll pass these as well. I do offer health coaching, which is more of a verbal and educational process. So it's giving you handouts and tools that can help you become as healthy as possible. I have an Optimum Nutrition 3-month program. This one is $5.97. It includes 2 sessions per month for 3 months. And each session you get a giveaway, like a book or a DVD or some kind of a kitchen tool that goes along with the process that we're discovering. No more than 3 recommendations per session, so that over the 3-month time you are able to learn how to incorporate these recommendations into your daily lifestyle so it becomes more routine. So it's more about somebody that wants to revamp their health, reach their optimal weight. I do have a lot of clients that have reversed major diseases, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, the big 3, along with this whole foods plant-based approach. So I'm not going to pass these out because I know it's not for everyone, but there are some of these flyers on the side table, as well as some testimonials from my clients, mostly the coaching clients and some that have been through the raw foods preparation classes. My last offer is that I do have a complimentary 1-hour consultation on the back of my business card. So I'm going to pass these out in both directions. There's more business cards on the table if I didn't take enough. But that 1 hour is designed to help you discover your goals, how you can improve your health. We review a 3-page health history document that I have you fill out through my website, which is audreyfontaine.net, by the way. And then it can be either over the phone or in my Rohnert Park home office. So I do have clients all over the world. Some of you are, San Francisco-based or other areas of the world. So do know that I do coaching over the phone, and you don't have to be in the Rohnert Park, California area. I'm getting kudos on the salad. I saw a thumbs up on the smoothie. Any questions? I don't have a recipe book, no. I don't create 100% of my recipes. I find them online or other people's books. I tweak them to make them my own, but I'd rather teach people to learn how to make the food themselves. I don't want to become an author at this point. Well, I'm here for these types of talks. I did the Berkeley Veg Fest, and I've been invited to do another presentation shortly in the San Francisco area. So I do come down this way. If you have an opportunity, I'm open to doing something closer to home for the San Francisco-based folks. Yes?
How do you keep your greens fresh and fresh?
Mostly I put them in the lettuce spinner, and I get the moisture out after I rinse them, and I store them right in there with the lid on. So that's the way that I keep them. It keeps for a few days, certainly. Yes. And we're on a tight schedule, so a couple more questions. I wash the greens just in water. I don't use any special vegetable wash. I put them in the spinner and I swish the water through them with enough room to get the water between them. And then I take the strainer out and spin it dry. So it's pretty simple.
Salad in advance and take it to a potluck.
If you wanted, on this salad, if you wanted to make it in advance and take it to a potluck is her question, what I would do is I would keep the arugula separate. Get your platter, put it on the platter as you're there, and then keep the dressing mixed with the vegetables and the pears. Put that on at the last minute, sprinkle it with the pears at the last minute. So you can prepare this one in advance, but once you've combined the ingredients, it will the arugula a little bit. Yes?
What's the name of the breakfast author, Victoria?
The book is Green Smoothie Revolution by Victoria Butenko. Butenko, yes. Yes. Yes?
I have a question. If you're sensitive to hemp seeds, can you leave it out?
Oh, certainly. She's asking if you're sensitive to hemp seeds, can you leave it out? Certainly. Anything that you're sensitive to, obviously, eliminate it. It's not going to alter the flavor of the smoothie too much. So what about the chocolate?
Cacao is the same as chocolate.
Yes, cacao. Her question is cacao the same as chocolate? Cacao, in its raw, natural form, either the nibs or the powder, is unadulterated chocolate from the cacao bean. And it hasn't been, again, processed with alkali or having any of the additional sweeteners or fats or anything added to it. So it is 2:30 on the dot. I recommend that you sign up for the third Tuesday Lunch and Learn. I have a sign-up sheet at the table right where that gentleman is standing. And I also have some more flyers, testimonials, business cards, etc. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. From Oakland.